want to pull from the top, not from the bottom. If you pull from the bottom, you will pull these pleats up. So then take about a little bit above it and come down. Leave enough space that the top of this pleat does not overlap the bottom of this pleat, because you're going to need some space in between to eventually tack these down to your lining. And again, you're going to pin it down on each end. This is just so it stays in place while you're ironing, and you don't have to worry about it moving around and you making an uneven pleat. This will also mean that you can easily move your pleats around and they're going to stay in place, and you don't need to immediately sew them down. This doesn't take an insane amount of strength to make these pleats. It just takes an insane amount of patience. So I have finished pleating down all of my fabric. As you can see, I have it in two parts. I like to cut the fabric in half when pleating it because it allows me to get more even pleats. The wider the fabric is, the more difficult it is to get even pleats all the way across. On the under tunic pattern, I had already left a space for putting in your hems and putting in your seam allowances. Some of them are a little bit bigger than others, so I'm going to have to trim them down. I would suggest doing seam allowances anywhere from 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. I usually go on a little bit bigger side just in case I make some mistakes. There's extra fabric for me to work with. So you're going to take your under tunic pattern and you are going to pin it to your black lining fabric. You're going to cut this out 4 times. 2 with a high back and 2 with a low front. This line here is for the front, this line here is for the back. I would suggest cutting all 4 of them out with this high back and then adding this one on in 2. So you're going to cut out 4 panels. Alright, now that you've got your 4 pieces cut out, you're going to accentuate the front neckline, keeping the back neckline the same as in your pattern. Then you're going to take your front patterns, pin them to the back patterns, and pin the back pattern together, making sure that in the back, in the center, you only pin to the waistline, and in the front and the center, you only pin to the waistline, but the sides are pinned all the way to the end. Once you've done that, you're going to try it on and make sure that it fits. Now that you have cut out all of the pleated patterned fabric, you're going to take and do a straight stitch all the way around the entire edge, just on the pleated fabric, not stitching your lining to the pleating fabric, just sewing the pleats so that way they stay together when you're using them without the tape. Using your original tunic pattern, place all of your pattern pieces onto it and mark out the waist on all of them. Then you are going to take your pleated fabric bits and pin them to each other, making sure that you leave the front and the back open to the waistline, but the sides pinned together. And then you're going to take your lining fabrics and you're going to pin them together with the same marks left at the waist and the sides as you did on your pleated fabric. Make sure that you are also pinning the shoulder seams together, but leaving your armhole and your neck hole open, as well as the front open, because that is where you're going to make your closure out of Velcro. Alrighty then, now that your pattern pieces are all pinned together, sew up your seams. Alright, now that all of your seams are sewn together, we're going to attach the lining to the coat. The way to do that is you're going to turn your coat inside out to where the outside is on the inside, and then you're going to take your other coat and do the same thing, making sure that the outer line is against the outer seam line, so the seam lines all match. So then you're going to take all of your seams and pin them to their matching seams, so that way when you fold this right side in or right side out, you will have finished seams on both the outside of the garment and the inside of the garment. First, you're going to attach the lining to the insides of the armholes on both sides. Then you are going to pin it to the outside seams all the way around it. So from all seams, including the bottom edge. The only one you are not going to sew across is the top right here, because that's where you're going to pull the fabric out of, and I will do my best to try and capture that on video. All seams have to be matching, because otherwise when you pull it in, it's not going to match up, because your pieces should be the same size, your seams should all be the same width. So everything should work, but it's best to make sure that you've pinned everything in place, so that way when you sew it all together, you won't get any surprises. It is also important to note at this point that you will want to remove all of the tape, if you are using any tape to keep your pleats down, while attaching the lining. Alrighty then, so everything is now pinned together. You can see all of my pins in here, the lining. This is the point where you can make any last minute changes you want to the design. If you need to take it in certain places, or if it's not fitting right, this is where you can make any last minute alterations. Because after this point, making alterations to the costume will be very difficult. Here it is with the lining side out and the pleated side in. You can see all of the seams on the entire thing, whichever direction you point it. The seams are pointing out, so that way when you invert it and you pull the costume through and you make it right side out, all of your seams will be on the inside, giving you completely finished seams across your costume. Just remember, when you sew it, leave the neck opening. Do not sew this and this together. Leave an opening so you can pull the fabric through. So start at one point and then sew literally all the way across it, the entire thing. So as you can see, all seams and the inside and the outside are all facing out. Now, to make them all face in, you're going to reach through the opening in your neck hole all the way to the end of one leg or one tail. Pull through, and you're going to reach back through, pull to the end, grab it, and pull it through. Adjust everything. Now you have all seams turned inward. Of course, you're going to have to make sure that everything falls into place and all that. But now, on the outside, all your seams are in, and on the inside, all your seams are in. So you're gonna have a nice, clean look on the inside. It'll also help from fraying if you ever wash it. Sounds like you're gonna have like a really dirty suit. Now that looks super baggy and super gross. So you're gonna wanna make sure that all of your corners are made corners and not loose. And then it'll hang a little better. Now at this point, everything is just very loose flowing. It's like a giant bag. So like we did with the arms, you're going to sew beneath every single fold. So just go from about here, sew underneath to about here, and then sew from about here, and sew underneath to about here. And that will make sure that all of your pleats stay lying down flat, and that'll make sure that the entire piece will stay together and it won't look like a giant bag. So to finish the armhole seams and the neck hole seams, top stitch on the outside, everything down. So once you have top stitched them all together, you're going to take a wide fold bias tape, and you're going to take one of the folds and you're going to sew it on the outside. You're going to fold it over and sew around it to completely encase your seam with this edge on it. Alright, so here you can see that the bias tape has been folded and pinned around the neck hole and is ready to be tacked down. And I will tack it down with a very thin line sewn all around the base, making sure I get both sides. And that's when you're going to want your armhole as well as the neckline to look like. That is all of the edges done. So now all of your seams should be finished and enclosed. Now we're going to start working on sewing down all of the pleats to your lining, and that should be the second to last step. The very final step, of course, is attaching the closing, so that way this thing will stay closed. It's done. It's all sewn down and everything. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Of course, it's not 100% perfect, but it is an undergarment, so it's going to be covered by the overcoat, which means if there are things wrong with it, things you don't necessarily like about it, because I know it's not perfect, and I would definitely want things a little bit different for this one. Don't worry about it, because you are going to have the overcoat, the surcoat, if you may, over top of it, and it'll be able to hide a lot of those things that you don't want. Basically, the only part of it that you're actually going to see is about from the waist to here, because when you walk, the coat is going to be open here and you're going to be able to see the sides. So as long as the sides turns out that the way you wanted it, if you don't take off your coat, no one's really going to notice that it's different. You might notice that this isn't a very sexy cut. It's not very form-fitting, it doesn't accentuate a whole bunch of things, and there's a reason for that. This is an undergarment. This is supposed to be like a knight's garment. It's supposed to be like a gambeson, if you may. If you know what a gambeson is, it's a thick piece of fabric, usually many layers thick, and it's used to help stop sword blows. It's not supposed to be super tight or super sexy garment. It's to help protect you. Alright, thank you for watching. I hope you stay tuned for next week when I go over how to make the surcoat or the outer coat thingy. The hood will be a separate video of its own, and then afterwards I'm going to go over the belt and some of the other little things about how to put it all together. So we're finally getting somewhere. I'm super excited. I feel pretty cool right now, dressed up. I'm really excited for where this is going to go, and I hope to see you next week.